get the ball, right? That's how good I was. And then I was sitting on the bench. And I was like, what, wait a second, what happened? And so at practice the next day, what was shown to me is that if I am on my man and the ball is going right by there up to the basket, that's not doing anything for the team, right? So even in man-to-man defense, if you can't just focus on your one activity, you have to focus on what the team is doing, right? You have to come off and guard the ball. And that's how it is in life too. You have to focus on the customer, the client. What are you trying to accomplish, right? It's not about you. It's not about your little goals in life or in your team, or, right? It's not about what objectives did I set for myself. It's about what does my team need to accomplish, and how is that helping the client, right? Helping the customer. And if those things aren't aligned, go fix it, because you have to go back and make sure that everything is focused on that customer. Okay. So I was also asked to talk a little bit about strategy, vision, and creativity. I'm going to do this a little fast because I think I'm about out of time. So strategy, I was asked, what are some of the important decisions that you've made in your career? So for me, I've done a lot of stuff around supply chain. And what I've found is the big decisions happen not by making incremental improvements. It's really about how do you go reduce this thing in half, right? How do you take your SKUs and cut them in half? How do you take your nodes and consolidate them so instead of having 5, you have 1? And boy, that is huge. Being able to take that step and say, you know what, we have to change everything if we're going to do that. And if you set that as the vision, then you can step back and say, wow, that would be a huge cost structure change, probably, right? But what would it take to get there? And then you back out and you find the inhibitors and you go tackle those one by one. So common mistakes in strategy are around thinking evolution instead of revolution. Thinking current cost structure, not future cost structure. It's really easy to model current costs. You got to think about what's your future cost structure and then build the path to get there. And then if you're going to try to take action, you can't do it without having real owners. If this person makes part of the decision, this person makes part of the decision, this person makes part of the decision, no one's making any decisions, right? Make sure you know who the owners are, get them aligned, make sure someone owns the decision when that needs to happen. Vision, my recommendation, and I was mentioning it earlier, find your passion, work on your passion. That's where you need to be. When you first start your job and throughout your career, be helpful. Build your network by helping others, right? If someone needs help, they're gonna if you spend your extra 10 minutes here and your extra hour there, you're gonna be much more popular and they're gonna help you in return, right? And get an advocate. So some people say get a mentor, those types of things. That's okay, you can do that. But what you need is an advocate, someone that will help you specifically for your career advancement. Okay, so coaches, mentors are great. They help you think about what to do, but you need someone to really promote you. So that's what you want to be looking at through your careers. Make sure there's someone that knows how great you are and can promote you when you get into that ranking conversation, right? And one of the questions was, well, what do you do when you're faced with something that's unfair? Well, hey, life is unfair, right? That's how it is. There are going to be unfair. You control your own attitude, right? Control your own attitude. And the way you deal with something unfair is you keep performing, and you perform better. And then you have the story to tell about how great you are, how great your team is the better story to tell, because it's through your team being successful that you will be successful. It's not about me. It's more, what did we do together? That's my advice there. And then creativity, how do you overcome fear of a new challenge? Well, first of all, it's being able to say, I've got this, right? It's being able to feel it yourself. It's back to that basketball analogy. The guy that does the free throws every day, just doing a whole bunch of free throws. The way you can do the high percentage free throws, just like the way you can conquer new projects, is recognize that practice, that seeing it, visualizing it yourself is how you're going to do it. And you have to have that good self-talk of, I've got this, I can do this. And then you go out and you break the problem down, you go network for support. Those people that you help, they will help you to figure out the right answers to the problems. And then this is my favorite quote of all times. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And in all situations, it really comes down to that, right? Of, are you working on the right things? Are you partnering with right people? Do you have integrity in what you're doing? And if you have all that, things are going to be good. Is this for
All right, our next speaker is Gary Bear, and he began his journey with Caterpillar 30 years ago. Starting in the shop, Gary has worked in supervision, quality, Six Sigma, new product introduction, custom packaging, and for the last 4 years as the supply chain planning manager. He has a bachelor's degree from Indiana Wesleyan University and a master's from Purdue. Please join me in welcoming Gary Bear.
All right, so I had the gray hair before I started in supply chain, so that's not a contributor. I am very thankful for my 30 years at CAT. They've given me a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different cool things. Today I'm going to talk about motivation. And from my first couple slides, you might wonder if I'm ever going to get to motivation. But you know, one of the things about this program is it's really geared towards the students. We do a lot of interviewing. I get the opportunity to teach over here on occasion. And you know, I think my colleagues down here will tell you that a lot of people are book smart, and that's great. But then you get out into the real world and you have to apply that. And so that's kind of where I come from during my talks. So, next slide, please. All right. So you already heard the world is flat. I lead the team of procurement analysts that are the front line. I'll get to it a little bit more in a little while, but. Every time there's a problem, they come to my team, no matter what the problem is. So we get a feel every day for what's going on. Like I said, the world's flat. We're a big global economy. And while supply chains themselves aren't new, the management or that discipline is new. But don't kid yourselves, it's not simple, right? One size does not fit all. It takes a lot of constant attention just to stay on top of the latest concepts. And not only the concepts, but the latest request, right? So what are you going to do with your inventory? Well, we want to do this, and then we want to do this, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, or just on this slide, contrary to popular belief, parts just don't happen. You know, we joke about that, but I think, again, my colleagues work with, I hope I don't insult any engineers that think that we have trucks lined up that have iron on them just waiting to turn into something. And you know, while we're really good at what we do, we're not that good. And then the other thing is, no matter what goes on, it's got to be transparent to our customer. Because at the end of the day, we made a commitment to our customers, both internal and external, to get a product to him at a certain date, and that's his expectation. And based on previous jobs that I've had, I guarantee you that if I call him up and say, well, you know, we didn't get this schedule released or out in time or this and this, he does not care. He just wants to know, okay, so what are you going to do to make sure that you hit that date that you gave me Because in our case, there's a lot of things that are going on around that engine, right? It could be an offshore platform they're building, could be any number of things, and it's very important for us to hit our date to our external customer, but also our internal customers are very dependent on us as well. So here's some of the challenges that my team has faced in the last few years. Earthquakes, recessions, repressions, shipping late issues, transit times, inventory, I either have too much or too little. Those darn customer expectations I just referenced. Operational efficiency, not to mention, regardless of whether the parts are past due, defective, lost, or even engineering related, it's your fault, right? So welcome to supply chain. Next slide. All right, so like I said, motivation. Given all that, why would anybody want to be in supply chain? Well, I've had a lot of jobs, and I'll tell you what, this is the best job I've had. When I took this position, or before I took it, I was told that it's the worst job in the factory. Well, 4 years later, if it's the worst job, then the other jobs are pretty darn good, because this is a pretty good job. In my opinion, supply chain management is where it's at. If you like action, there is not a lack of action. It's the epicenter of everything. There's new concepts changing in our situation from a concept of lead time to response time. My boss and a couple people I'll mention in a minute know that my philosophy is I don't turn work away. I tell our orders group, you get the order, I'll get the iron, right? I want to beat my competition to the market. So sometimes I'm not very popular and I have to shut my door, but that's my philosophy. I need my suppliers to be able to respond, and if they come back and say, well, that this is our lead time, then my question back is, okay, so you need to understand that my engine is not an attachment on your fitting, and I'm trying to sell product. Supplier relationships, that's huge. That's a big thing for me, and I think somebody referenced Toyota earlier. That's kind of something that I've taken from the Toyota model, is working on those relationships and helping the suppliers realize that they are part of our team. We can't be successful if they don't help us be successful. And I don't wave the big Caterpillar hammer. I want to work with the suppliers. We have inventory strategies that are very challenging and interesting. And all of this while we have to keep our inventory down and product flowing. So there's never a dull moment in supply chain, in my opinion. Everything is exciting, and every day is a win. Every day is a win in supply chain. Next slide. So, but I can't do any of this without people. Now out here I have two of the top people in the supply chain corporate wide. I'll go that far. Now I'm not going to point them out because I don't want anybody snagging them from me. But we can't be successful if we don't have talented people. So how do you connect with those? That was the next thing, right? Because everybody's different. Well, in my opinion, you got to support and empower them. And hopefully these two will tell you that, I'll back them up. They make good decisions. In fact, everybody across the board that works on our team makes good decisions. And you can come into my office, you're allowed one can't, as long as there's 3 or 4 associated cans, right? And you also have to surround yourself with innovative, forward-thinking teammates who understand the goals, objectives, and expectations and are not afraid to take chances, right? If you got a good idea, go for it. Let's see what happens. You got to keep both your external and internal communications open. I don't mind bad news, but I need to know sooner rather than later. If you're one of my suppliers and you can't do something or you don't think you can do something, let me know before the day I need the parts, right? And we'll identify what the constraints are and we'll throw resources at it or help you to figure out how to be successful, right? And then be fair, open, and honest with not only your team, but also your suppliers, right? Because they are part of your team. And when I reread that, I thought, well, that kind of separates them, but they are part of our team. Next slide. But I can have the greatest people, we can have the greatest concepts, we can have the greatest ideas, but if you don't have the right leadership, then none of that matters. So this is Gary's take on leadership, and this is what I look for in my team, and this is what I look for in people that we interview. You got to be a positive role model, right? Everybody's looking at you every day as a leader to see how you react. I try to go out every morning with my group and chat it up a little bit with them. And when my door's closed, they don't like it. But I've told them there's days where they want my door to be closed, right? But they know that they can come in and they can open up and they can vent, and I'll listen, and then it doesn't go any farther. You got to be real, and that's one of the things I've noticed today about the speakers is it just seemed to me that everybody was really authentic, right? And don't kid yourself, people know when you're trying too hard, right? If you're out there trying to lead and you're just, I mean, people will see right through that. You got to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You got to be able to network. Don't be afraid to network. If you don't know how to do something, call somebody up that does. I mean, get on the internet and look at best practices. How are people doing this? I'm thinking about doing it. Well, how do you do it? Find someone to mentor. Mentioned mentors earlier. Not only to mentor with, but to mentor to, right? And then lastly, let the team know and show that you have their back. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to have our second panel. So get your questions ready. If all the panelists could come up. All right, so they're going to go ahead and introduce themselves here very briefly, and then we'll start taking some questions.
Hi, I'm Philip O'Keefe. I'm Director of Procurement Services here at Purdue. About 34 years of experience in corporate world, multiple industries all over the world, till I finally found my vocation here about 2 years ago. I'm passionate about supply chain, particularly the procurement aspect of it, because of the value contribution that we can make through that, but also in areas such as sales and operations planning, strategic planning for the supply chain. And I would say I've been learning every day for those 34 years, and would advise you to look forward to a lifetime of learning if you go down this path.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Minozzi, currently working at Twitter as a supply chain manager. I actually graduated from Purdue with a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management, specialization in Manufacturing Management in '99. And I'm really happy to be back here today to talk to you guys about career stuff. I have lots of thoughts about all of the topics that have come up today, from motivation to work-life balance and all sorts of things like that. I took internships with Boeing and McDonnell Douglas when I was here. I went to work at Kimberly-Clark after I graduated. I started out in a mill out in Everett, Washington. Worked there for a couple of years and decided I loved the West Coast and loved the Seattle area, so I stayed out there and worked for Microsoft for about 5 years. Took a couple years off to do some traveling, and ended up working at an energy efficiency company as a program manager for a couple of years, and that brought me down to San Francisco. And then once I got to San Francisco, I found this really great opportunity at Twitter. And no one would have thought that Twitter would have supply chain, but I'm happy to answer your questions about what that means when we get around to that. So here you go.
Thank you. My name is Jesse Moore. I'm the Director of Supply Diversity Development here at Purdue University. My role in that capacity is to make sure our supply chain includes diversity. And as I hear the topics and the subjects discussed today, and especially when we're talking globally, you'll find out as you progress through your careers that as you look at different countries and nations and cultures, that they have different rules in which they try to abide by, especially when they're producing products and services. In this particular country, supplier diversity development is an attempt to kind of undo some overlooking of certain parts of our community, such as women, such as minority businesses. So it's been a pleasure. My life has been in economic development. I was a lobbyist for the state chamber here in Indiana for a few years. Head up economic development and small business. I had the Indianapolis Black Chamber for about 7 years. So small business advocacy and economic development has been my career. And it was not what I planned coming out of school, but this is where my path has led me, and it's the right one for me.
Kara Kirtland.
Hi, my name is Bill Ensign. I'm with Evonik Corporation here in Lafayette. It's a fine chemicals manufacturer. I actually was a graduate of Crandert in 1990 with a degree in industrial management with a minor in industrial engineering. Right out of school, I was a co-op student, and I want to put it out there that internships and co-ops are just so crucial. So anytime you have those opportunities, please do that. It so happens that my co-op experience is what got me into my career, and by luck, by chance, it gave me the career that was made for me. The procurement manager for Eli Lilly, who I used to work for, I'll probably explain that in a little bit, came here and had an opening, and my two out of my three internship experiences were in procurement. So here you had a procurement manager talking to an intern who had procurement experience, and boom, it was a connection. I had the job, no problem. So the other key thing that I'm going to emphasize is networking with other businesses. These gentlemen over here that work at Purdue, I work with them on a regular basis in terms of networking and in our supply chain. And I highly recommend that you not only work within your own corporations, but work with businesses in your community or businesses in your industry, because it's so crucial.
Gary Bear.
All right, who has a question?
Hi, my name is Seongjin Shin, industry engineering junior. Can I ask 2 questions? Short questions. So the first one will be how to be a great mentor, a good mentor. So I learned a lot from my mentor on the previous company, and now I'm on the some kind of Purdue program that I have 5 students that I have to mentoring for them. But last time it's mentioning about the just don't say do this, and that was my first question. And second question will be, how can you guys define the dream? The dream?
The dream?
Yeah.
Not a dream, but the dream.
So as far as mentors, so the question was how to mentor. The mentors that I have had, I've had several at CAT, and those guys have identified things in me that I didn't know that I had any ability to do. I mean, in fact, if it was up to me, I'd probably still be driving a fork truck. Yet I had people that came to me and said, well, why don't you try this, why don't you try that, and gave me confidence. But at the same time, when I needed to be pulled in, they didn't hesitate to give me that advice too, and tell me that maybe I didn't need to be as forceful or direct. And then as far as the dream goes, I'm not sure how to answer that one. Again, my dream was to get my foot in the door at CAT, and to this day, there's times where I go, man, I work at Caterpillar. It's pretty cool. And then once I got my foot in the door, cool things just started happening. So I never really had a dream other than getting my foot in the door, and then it took off from there. And I don't have any regrets.
I'm going to take the dream one a little bit differently. So sometimes the dream just happens. So back to the interesting story that I had. So I did work for Eli Lilly for 19 years, And our plant site was sold to Evonik, and so that's where I switched to Evonik Corporation. And it was January 1st, 2010 of the sale. And in that day, our plant site switched industries. So in one day. So because we were a manufacturing facility for a pharmaceutical company, by being sold to Evonik, we got into contract manufacturing. And so we same people, same facility, same, we made pretty much the same product at first, and we switched industries in one day. What might be, and from a procurement perspective, when I was with Eli Lilly, I pointed to lots of national contracts that I helped with some, but my counterparts in corporate procurement had done a lot. Well, the day I became Evonik, I didn't have any contracts to point to. I was a whole different company. I could not point to the Eli Lilly contracts. So on that day, I thought it was a nightmare. But when you think about it and you think of the opportunity that that gave me in terms of skill development and challenges and meeting new people and creating my whole new supply chain, it ended up to be a dream. But that day, I thought it was a nightmare.
So for me, the dream is really about where am I having fun, right? And can I see a path to, if I'm having fun now, to keep having fun? So, and am I making a difference? Because it's not that interesting to just have fun if you feel like you have the satisfaction of making a difference. Those are the two things that I look for in my career path. And I've turned down management jobs because I'm just having too much fun doing this, or I've turned down, going that way because this way's more fun. So for me, it's about what are the skills that I need to keep going in the direction that's impactful and fun. From a mentor perspective, there's two things that I typically do in a mentor relationship. One is ask a lot of questions. So typically someone new in their career or new in a job, they're asking questions, right? but they're kind of focused in on what they're doing right now. And so to help them think through that, I ask more questions, right? I don't try to answer. If they're asking me questions, I often turn that around with a question back to them. So, and that helps them develop themselves, right? Another thing is really around helping them negotiate bureaucracy or politics, or what's that person really saying, right? So there's always a message behind a message, and that's part of when I was talking about you're helping people out, you're learning their soft skills. And so as someone more senior in an organization, you know how things work from a soft skills perspective, and you can help negotiate that for the new people on your team. Let them know what's really going on when that happened, right?
The dream question is very intriguing. Like Bill, I think it changes over time. When I think of an individual who knew what they wanted to do early on in life and then proceeded to put in place those situations so that they can be successful, I think about Tiger Woods. At 3 years old, he's on national TV with a golf club playing, so the whole world can see him. And he luckily had the skills and the ability and the environment that supported that dream. But there are other people out there, and I think of me, for instance, who have had a number of dreams over the lifetime. Each one of them, as I look forward, would be the one that would carry me into eternity. And as it turned out, it didn't happen that way. But as I came to those different decision-making points, you make the best decision that you can based upon the knowledge and the experience and the information that you have at the time. So there's a spectrum of dreams that fall between those that are established early on and then those that are established every day. Neither of which are right or wrong. It's just which one fits your personality and what you plan to do and which one you're having the most fun in. The mentor-protege question is another interesting one, depending upon which space you occupy. Are you the mentor or are you the mentee? Each one is different, very much so. As a mentor, I think what you try to do is guide and assist based upon your experience and your expertise. As a protege, I think that's even more important case to ask questions, to find someone that you can trust to have your best interests at heart. Because the worst thing that I think one of the worst things I've ever seen is a mentor that uses a protege to further their own position, wherever it may be. So you've got to find a relationship that is based in trust, and it has to be unadulterated. I mean, it's got to be no questions about the trust going forward and whose benefit in that relationship.
I'll start with the dream thing too, because I think it'll lead into the mentor thing, if I remember everything that I want to say. When I was an undergrad at Purdue, had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know I wanted to be even going into supply chain. I originally was accepted to Purdue as a biology major. And I switched before even my freshman year into industrial management. And I switched based on something completely silly, which was in an orientation thing. I think well, first I realized I want to be around people. I don't actually want to be stuck in a lab my entire life. I want to be interacting with people. And so then that was why I switched into management. And during management orientation, before I even came on campus, I looked at the salaries for the different majors and and I went, ooh, industrial management, that sounds interesting. And I could still minor in biology. And so, I got thinking about that, and then things completely changed. But being open to those changes and thinking about things as you go along and really weighing those decisions, as Karen said earlier, about how you feel about the things you want to accomplish in your life, right? Really knowing where you stand on those points and then what it is that you want to go after because of that. And there have been a bunch of points in my life, like when, I knew I wanted to move to Washington. I knew I didn't want to work for Boeing, but I knew I wanted to move to Seattle after my internship between my junior and senior year. And I looked for companies that would put me out there. And my dad actually was the one that suggested to me, hey, maybe you should interview with Kimberly-Clark. I hear they have really good reputation for logistics. And strangely enough, my dad was in logistics, but don't even get me started on that one. But so I went to the interview like on a fluke. I kind of didn't even really think about it. And I zipped through all of the tests that they give you. And then I went and I interviewed with them. And they asked me, like, well, here, they put a map in front of me and said, like, well, we usually like to start our first year people off at mills. Where would you want to work if we gave you an offer? And I looked at the map and I noticed that they had a mill near Seattle, Washington. And I just pointed at it and I said, I want to work there. And they said, well, what's your second choice? And I said, that one. And they ended up giving me an offer, and I ended up taking it, and I ended up moving out there, and so on and so forth. I mean, these things happen throughout your career, and you have to be really in touch with who you are as a person and what it is that you want to get out of those experiences. And I always have asked myself, okay, maybe not always, because in the very beginning I didn't know to ask myself this, but at some point I learned. You ask yourself, what is it that I can offer to this company that nobody else can? What are the specific things that I'm bringing to the table that very few other people probably can bring to this opportunity? And what am I going to learn here? What do I want to learn here? What do I want to get out of this experience? What is the thing that I'm going to take away from this? And being really focused on that, because if you lose focus on that, you start to focus on things that are maybe not as important to you, like getting the next promotion or getting a job that you don't really actually want, but you think that because of ambition is the thing that you want to do. And you have to always keep that in, you always have to keep your priorities in mind when you're in these positions, because ambition can, if you're an ambitious person by nature, ambition can be very attractive, right? You're always going to be looking for those positions, and you may find yourself in a situation where you don't actually want to be. And in those situations, you should definitely recognize that right away and try to get out, as you know, like try to go find something else that you're excited about. And so for the mentorship thing, I would say lots of people don't really know what it is that they're passionate about. They don't really know what the thing is that they get excited about or what the thing is that they want to do is. And so when I manage people or when I interview people, I always try to get to that point in the conversation where they get really animated. And you can tell, you know, they lean forward in their seat and they get really excited and they talk about things. And the people those of you who did the poster competition, when people asked you questions and you were responding on the fly, that was the most engaged you were in the entire conversation. And you have to find a way to tap into that right from the beginning of your, because that's when you make that connection, right? That's when you're on the ball, and that's when you're the most attractive candidate that you can be to a company. Or you're most in touch with what it is that you want to do. And if you as a mentor can help the person that you're mentoring find that thing, they may not even realize that they're excited about it. But if you can help identify that for them, then that's going to help them get to that much quicker, right?
There you go. 34 years is a long time in a career. So as you can imagine, there's been a few dreams. But I grew up in Ireland and finished, came out of school